Hello there. I had so much fun on the last one where why fox nuts were so expensive. It's just honestly, I'm more fascinated by the fact of how they were discovered. I mean, there's so much work to get to them, but it's just like saffron. Now it's saffron. Why is it so expensive? Let's figure that out. Why real saffron is so expensive? Because I do know that there are knockoffs of this. If you go like to certain areas, there are knockoffs of saffron, and it's either something that's been colored to look like it, or it probably maybe is real saffron just dyed again, so it's just got the color that's already. I don't know. I don't know exactly what saffron is. I just know it's bloody expensive and it's forged. People sell fake saffron. Here we go.
Even in the expensive world of spices, saffron stands out. And real saffron can cost you over $10,000 per kilogram. Sought after for thousands of years as a spice, a dye, and a medicine, you need over 150 flowers to make just 1 gram of saffron. And the stuff you have at home in the cupboard could well be fake. So just what makes this spice so expensive?
I don't have saffron in the cupboard. No, I don't think I've ever had it in anything. I've never had anything that required it in a recipe. So I just fascinating that it's expensive. It must taste amazing, but using it as a dye, I guess now it'd be cheaper to use something else as a dye, unless it's more permanent and doesn't wear out over time. If it's like a consistent forever dye, then that would make sense. And medicine would always be
Saffron
vital.
is the red stigma of the Crocus sativus. Each crocus has 3 small stigmas that have to be picked carefully by hand. This minuscule harvest means that the amount you get from each flower is roughly 0.006 grams. No machine can do the delicate work required to harvest these thin threads, and it can take 40 hours of hard manual labour to produce just 1 kilogram of high quality saffron. Growing the plants isn't exactly easy either.
They're actually called corms, but they're like a bulb, basically, like a flower bulb. So the more flowers per bulb you can get, and the bigger the flowers, really, and that all depends on how you look after it, how you grow it, the climate. So, for example, if it rains just before harvest, we get bigger flowers. If it's very dry just before harvest, the flowers are smaller. So you look after the crop during the year by hand, and you pick the flowers by hand, and you process the flowers by hand.
Once the crop starts flowering, harvesters have to work fast to make sure they can pick it all in time. Almost all of the saffron planted can flower within 1 week of the year, and to maintain the quality, the flowers are best picked first thing in the morning. Quality is key when growing such a precise crop, and the taste of the saffron depends on the rainfall, temperature, and soil. Kashmir is famed for producing some of the highest quality saffron in the world.
Yeah, and I know it can't really grow in most places. That's one thing I know. Like, I always thought like you could just take it, make it grow anywhere, but it's like only stuck in certain locations. You can't. I think maybe people have tried, or maybe it's just like what tobacco was in Spain before someone basically took a seed and then it turned into this massive vine or a weed that growed across the coast of the U.S. So maybe they just have the market cornered. But then again, I'm thinking about it. There's so much work involved, and if you saturate the market with too much, the people who work so hard to create this stuff would get paid less because there are no machines. Like in the last video, it's just like make a machine to do this. Make a machine to do this. Machines can sense, but a lot of the stuff is very precise. And unless it's got that smarter AI knowing exactly what it's doing, sensors in it, which would cost a ridiculous fortune, there would be no reason in doing this by a machine.
जो पूरे कश्मीर वादी में जो है ये रेड सॉइल जो है ज़्यादातर यही पाई जाती है और ये जो है ये सैफरान की रेड सॉइल जो है ये एक कुदरती तौर से एक फर्टिलाइज्ड लैंड होती है। जैसे कि अभी हम जा रहे हैं किसी और इलाके में, वहाँ की जो लैंड उस पर काफ़ी ज़्यादा मेहनत करनी पड़ती है, राइट। उसमें जो है कंपोजिशन या कुछ ऐसे डालने पड़ते हैं, लेकिन ये जो रेड सॉइल है इसमें ये एक अंदरूनी मजबूत होती है क्योंकि इसको अल्लाह ताला ने कुदरत की तरफ से, और ये जो है ये काफ़ी फेमस है इन ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड।
And that small strand of saffron that you harvest as a result of all of this work Well, to get the highest grades, you might need to throw half of it away. The most expensive, highest grade saffron is generally made up of just the very tips of the stigma. In Iran, where over 90% of the world's saffron is produced, there are 4 grades. The lowest grade is the bunch. That's the entire strand that's pulled from the flower, from the dark red tips to the yellow base. In higher grades, the yellow strand is removed, leaving only a long strand of pure red. That means a kilo of saffron could be made up of 450,000 strands. And to get that many strands, you need 150,000 flowers. And those flowers take up a lot of growing space. Cumin, for example, can yield 600 kilos per acre. Nutmeg gets you around 350 kilograms in the same space. Use that land for saffron instead, and you get a 1.8 kilogram harvest. Despite the incredible amount of work and space this crop takes up, demand for the spice is increasing, and over 200 metric tons of saffron threads are harvested worldwide each year.
Okay. So, that's... okay, I understand if there's a supply and demand, it's worth it, but it's like there's so many other crops you could grow which are much simpler to handle. You have the land for it, the seasons, the climate and everything for it. Yet you purpose fit, like this is the issue with like the whole lumber, cutting down trees for lumber, and then they'd replant trees that were designed. They weren't local to that area, but they were great for rubber, turning it into like plastics and things like that. You know, the trees that they use for like plastic, and it changes and revitalizes, and it's just like sometimes it's just better to, if you have farming land, like a fig orchard. My family lives on a fig orchard, and everyone, like, what was it? Pistachios. Pistachios started becoming the most expensive crop. And what happened? All our neighbors who had fig orchards ripped out all their figs, planted pistachios, and for like the first 3 years, as those pistachio trees were growing, they weren't really making anything, and our figs actually made more. Sure, we weren't really farming it. We'd leased it out, so they were making the money, but still, it made more for the person who leased out the land than pistachios ever would have, because everyone turned to pistachios because, oh, that's what's in. It's just... and the thing is, they're spending so much land. I don't know. I've never had saffron. Maybe it's one of these... God-given spices that just flavors everything, but I don't think I'd be willing to pay $100 on just a small little bottle of seasoning. I don't ever see the purpose, but I could be absolutely wrong. Maybe it is this absolute miracle. I'm just assuming it's like $100 for this, just because all this hard work, the massive land that goes into it, just for this small amount of product, is crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. That's the result of about 30 billion flowers.
Grow something else.
Demand for the threads is so high
of course you don't
that many
want it to
adulterate
disappear
or produce fake saffron. Threads that look real at first glance could actually be made of corn silks, coconut fibers, or even horsehair. Synthetic colorings are also used to dye the lower grade stigmas and sell them as high grade saffron. In late 2019, a fake saffron crime ring was uncovered in the UK, which led to a 2-year international investigation. And back in 2010, Spain exported 190,000 kilos of saffron, worth $50 million, but the country's total production amounted to only 1,500 kilos. At the time, a local farmers' union reported that up to 90% of Spanish saffron exports were fraudulent. The industry has attempted to crack down on these fake and mislabeled products, but the problem still persists, and the market for fake saffron is closing many real saffron farmers down. So what does real saffron actually taste like?
I've been asked that one by a lot of people over the years. It's so difficult to describe, which is, I think, part of its fascination for people and why it ended up, as an expensive product, because it just adds something. It's a bittersweet flavour. It's an earthy flavour. Trying to replicate it's very difficult. People have tried to do that, I know.
While saffron is just as popular as ever, it's been sought after throughout history. In Greek mythology, Zeus sometimes slept on a bed of saffron, and Cleopatra was said to bathe in saffron and milk, using the dyeing properties of the spice as an ancient fake tan. Every culture seems to have its own myth about the spice's powers, And in the 14th century, saffron's popularity skyrocketed across Europe when it was thought to be a possible cure for the plague. But there's a recent looming problem for saffron and its price: climate change. In Kashmir, production has dropped significantly, and many farmers are selling their land instead.
Don't sell,
we
grow
had
something else.
very few rains in the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. The temperature and the climate has completely changed in Kashmir. When I was
The climate was basic. Like I live in the desert. On a fig field. There was absolutely no rain for like 20 years, and then all of a sudden this year alone we've had flooding. We've had so many storms where the power and everything is going out. It's like everything that had been disappearing all came at once, and it's just going to go away again, and then in 20 years it'll happen again.
a kid, when we used to go to the saffron farms to pick up the saffron, it would at least take us 2 days to pick up the saffron from the same fields, which nowadays you could just pick up in half an hour.
They're growing more.
I'm very emotional about the saffron, because this is a cultural identity of Kashmir and especially the people of Pampur. But the thing is that the production is declining, and the lands are being sold, the houses are being built on the saffron lands. It really disheartens me.
Between 2017 and 18, saffron production in the region fell almost 70%, from 16.5 metric tons down to 5.2. And with continuing droughts and climate change, this harvest could become even more rare.
Well, this last rainy season will get it to explode for a bit. Wrong thing. But yeah. Just click the channel. Yeah, that's interesting, because I'm someone who's just like, it seems like such a waste of space. And now they're building land, they're building houses, and here I'm thinking food. You can build other food. Like there was that one farm that had trees, like I don't know what kind of trees, I didn't actually pay attention, but they had trees, productive fruit trees growing in the midst of the saffron farm. Makes sense. Multitask. I know the flowers aren't getting as much light, which probably isn't a good thing. I think it should have just been one line of fruit trees and then saffron, then another line of fruit trees and then saffron. So that way if they're spaced out enough, the shade would move and still they'd get their sun. And I think it might actually help them grow, because the moisture would actually stay locked in on them longer with the shade in specific areas. But then again, I'm not an agriculturalist, so I wouldn't know for sure. But yeah, it's like grow something that isn't a season or a spice, but is actually a food product. I don't know. It's a way of life for people, and I guess it makes sense, and I guess it's profitable. But of course, when there's fraudulent stuff in the taking up everything, then of course it's not going to be as profitable, and you'd lose your business. What you make your living off of because everyone's trying to, this is it. It's horsehair. It's been dyed. It's perfect. It's what you want to eat. Just disturbing, absolutely disturbing. Horsehair. How? But yeah, that's honestly just a little insane. Yeah, but still, I've never had it, so I don't know. I can't say for certain. What does that taste like? Because he's describing it, and I'm just like, an earthly flavor. I've had seasons that add just a bit of that. It's spicy, salty, just like sour. Like, what are you eating that would taste good on? But I don't know. Everyone describes everything differently. Thank you all for watching. Talk to you next time. Toodles.